Welcome students of Form 2, Form 2A and Form 2B. We are talking about Chapter 5 and we're especially talking about Part 2, Paragraph 2 about tourism in the global village, a world where everything is connected by modes of transportation or by the internet. And we're now talking about regional factors in impacting tourism. We're talking about the Caribbean and a little bit about North America and South America, but mainly regional. We're talking about how in the global village tourism has influence, but also how our factors in the region influence the success of tourism. Like always, get the book in front of you, talking about paragraph 2, regional impact on tourism, and we're going to look at outlining regional factors where you see that the learning verb is outline, was less than describing, less than explaining, but somewhat more than identifying and naming. Just like outlining is just like in a few phrases, outline regional factors that impact the tourist industry. And I hope you know that the tourist industry in the last 5 years on Curacao has grown a lot. Este crece, hope y más. It has become very big and a very important economic source for the prosperity of Curacao. So please look at this behavior verb. What you have to do, you have to outline the regional factors that impact the tourist industry, for instance, that of Curacao. Regional factors impacting tourism. So we're going to look at the region of the Caribbean, and like I said, a little bit South America and a little bit North America. So tourism is important to the economies of Caribbean countries. An economy has to grow. Each year it has to become a little bit bigger because the government gets more tax revenues and the government has more money to make it even bigger next year. And when we're talking about money, we're talking about the currencies of the Caribbean, like the Eastern Caribbean, but also that of Curacao, the Caribbean guilder. So tourism is important for our economy, and visitors, but mostly tourists, come to the region for many reasons, but traditionally is the tree, sun, sea, and strand, and sand actually. Yeah. So we have sun, that's very important, what's often absent in Western Europe. The sea, we have sea in other parts of the world, but not as beautiful as we have here. And sand, that is also very beautiful here, but sometimes it's like it's brought to here, like in Mambo, where the sand isn't naturally there. They just brought it to there to make it even more beautiful than it is already. So these three things, sun, sea, and sand, they are very attractive for people all around the world. People coming from Western Europe, people coming from Eastern Europe, people coming from Australia or North America. They are attracted and come to the Caribbean because of these three things. And the first glimpse, the first sight a tourist has of the destination of their Caribbean holiday will be most likely in a brochure, yes, or on a website. So this is also a consequence of the global village, of the globalization. It brings the world more together by internet, by the World Wide Web. And tourists can book their vacations online and are seduced by all the beautiful pictures of the Caribbean, like this one, that they see online. And this is how Curacao also looks like. But of course, they choose the most beautiful pictures to seduce people, to convince people to book their vacations to the Caribbean. But there are a few challenges to this. Yes, because we have wonderful attributes, but at the same time, there are also challenges to the continuing success of the Caribbean. Things that when tourists arrive here, that they see there's also an other side to the Caribbean, And if we don't do anything about it, tourists will stop coming and they will stop bringing their money. Yeah, there are factors that challenge the continuing success and growth of the tourist industry. And if we don't do anything about this, tourists will stop coming and they won't bring their dollars and their money anymore. What are those? What are those challenges to the continuing success and the growth of the tourist industry to the Caribbean, but also, of course, to Curacao? Well, one thing we've seen is that a global pandemic can really danger the success, economic success of the tourism in the Caribbean, because in 2020 and 2021, the start of the COVID pandemic, the arrival of tourists to the Caribbean, Abaha, has dropped, has decreased to a level that a lot of people in the Caribbean lost their jobs and their income. So we gotta prepare ourselves, I would say, to next time where a global pandemic will happen, that we are prepared for this and that we prepare for the next time that a thing like COVID will happen to the world. But there are also other dangers. For instance, pollution. Pollution da un peliger grandi. And the first thing we're going to talk about is land pollution. So pollution describes any contamination of the natural environment, and we have different kinds of pollution. For instance, water pollution, but also air pollution, land pollution, and many other kinds of pollution. Yeah, so we have many other kinds of pollution that also can contaminate our beautiful islands. And the first example I will use is land, or also called soil pollution. Soil pollution, or like you can see here, the pollution of land. Yeah, so land pollution most likely to impact tourism arises from solid waste. If people dispose of garbage improperly and don't give it to Silicor, but just throw it away randomly into the bushes, onto the streets, the areas look unsightly, like you can see here. I used to live in Rio Canario, and behind me used to have a big amount of bushes, and was a lot of waste there. There were fridges there that didn't work anymore. There were furniture there, big piles of garbage there, and it looked very unsightly. And let's be honest, every single one of you knows these kinds of areas where people dump their garbage. Landfill sites where the Celicor can bring its garbage, where solid waste is disposed or needs to be located away from residents and tourist areas. Because when they are close by tourist areas, they just look very unsightly. Yeah, and this isn't what you want from an area. So they need to be located away from tourist areas, to be exact. Land pollution most likely to impact tourism arises from solid waste. L'inquinamento es que significa desperdicio sólido. If you have a better word for it, please let me know. And if people dispose of garbage improperly, like we said before, areas look unsightly. They're not beautiful. And landfill sites where solid waste is disposed, yeah, need to be located away from residents and tourist areas because that looks really better. And water pollution occurs for a number of reasons. So we have said land pollution, but there is also water pollution. Pollution de agua, if I say correctly. And pollution de agua, like you can see here, pollution de agua, water pollution occurs for a number of reasons, including chemical runoff. So solid waste can wind up into the water, like you can see here with the dolphin, but you also have chemical runoff, and chemical runoff can have a cause of agriculture, yes, but it can also be caused by the discharge of derrame químico, yeah, or toxic chemicals. So it can be runoff, derame químico, from agriculture, but it can also be a discharge of toxic chemicals or untreated human sewage, like you see here at the mangrove uh, in close to Otrobanda by Rif. We have fecale colibacteria, what are just other bacteria that come from human sewage. And from time to time, the mangrove close to Otrobanda is closed off because they have too much so-called fecale colibacteria, what is just a fancy word for human sewage. So this is a big issue on the island too, close to Otrobanda. We have a lot of human sewage that is contaminated, that is toxic, and we cannot leave that close by the tourists because they can become ill because of that. Yeah, so water pollution, in other words, is very dangerous. And the water pollution is not only caused by human sewage, but you can guess also that the refinery during its years has also caused some water contamination. Yeah, and improper practices in mining and sand mining activities add extra sediment, like you can see here, in our waters, in our seas, but also in our local waters, you get a certain sediment, like you can see here. And this sediment can be contaminated, it can be polluted, and that's also very bad for our health, for ourselves, but also, of course, for our tourists. Yeah, so all of this causa de polución de agua. Yes, and it is bad for us, but it is also bad of tourism because when tourists become sick or when they see this or they smell this, they're less likely to come back, but they're also spread their reviews online and they cause other tourists less likely to come to our island. In other words, it's very bad. Then the last one, air pollution. Like you can see here, air pollution. Air pollution arises from exhaust fumes, like we see here. Curacao people like to fever, they like to do drag racing, they like to ride around in their cars, but their cars exhaust fumes and they go up into the air. And these fumes are very bad for the air on our island. But not only motor vehicles and cars, they exhaust fumes. Also, factories and also refineries emit fumes. We call this also emissions. Yeah, so you guess it again. The oil refinery for decades has exhausted fumes and emissions into the air, and these haven't been good for the air on our island. Yeah, so factories, but also like you can see here, the refinery has blown fumes and emissions into the air, sprays from agricultural chemicals, and dust from mining operations. And we have had phosphate mines on our island that haven't always been good for the air health on our island. And tourists visit the Caribbean not for this reason. They don't visit the island to breathe in fumes from the cars and the fevering and the oil refinery. They visit our island to experience high air quality, not because of the emission. Yeah, emission. They visit our island for the high air quality. Yeah, kwaliteit alto di air. Yeah, this is why they visit our island, and not because of the oil refinery and its fumes, not because of the fevering, fever, however you call it, or because of the bad cars we sometimes drive. They visit the island because the kwaliteit alto di air. In the Caribbean, they expect this. Yes, so we have to prevent our air that we breathe becoming unhealthy for ourselves, but also to prevent the tourists from coming. Yeah, because they come to our island for clean air and not because of our fumes or emissions from the refinery, not because of our improvised motorcycles, or not because of the bad pickups we keep driving with. So we have to keep doing things about this, because the tourists will stop coming if we don't. This is the first video of more videos about this topic. We talk, unfortunately, about more examples of pollution. And keep in mind the goal: you have to be able to outline regional factors that impact on the tourist industry on our island. And please keep an open mind for the behavioral verbs that you have to study. You have to be able to outline them. What is more than identifying? It is more than just naming. It's less than explaining them. It's less than describing. I hope you found this video about tourism in the global village helpful. If you want to subscribe, you can do that below. If you want to ask a question, you can do that below or during class. And for now, a very well meant goodbye to you all, and I wish you a very nice day.